Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have a very special guest with me here today. I know for me, many of my clients are usually in my generation or elder, I'll say. And I know that a lot of people, especially coaches and holistic practitioners, especially people who are starting to own their wisdom and know that they can help people and start stepping forward with some modality or skill and want to make a huge difference in the world. Oftentimes, they've got some life under their belts and they're starting this new endeavor from a place of like, I'm old enough to do this in some way. And so I've got a wonderful expert and brilliant person on the line with me today who talks all about how those later years in your life can actually be your beautiful second act. So hang on for just a second. We'll be right back. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Awesome. So Patti Diener is an author, creative entrepreneur, and podcast host of Beautiful Second Act. At 53, she retired early from public education to follow her dream of writing full time. Now at 54, she's spending time finding the parts of herself she left behind many years ago and is daring to live a truly fulfilled life. How dare you? Just kidding. Beautiful Second Act's motto is to live your best life in the second half of life. Nothing changes if you don't first make a change. She strives to reach as many people as possible to spread the message that it's never too late. I love that message. Thanks for being on the show, Patti.
Oh gosh, thank you, Molly, for having me. It's a pleasure.
I mean, it sounds like that moment of choosing to retire from public education and start your own path was sort of a like jumping off point. What was it like for you? How's it been?
Well, it's been fabulous, but to get to this point was really grueling. I mean, you know, there's so much guilt that people have in making a change about who all it's going to affect, you know. And I was in public education the thing is I never can do any one thing because I swear to God, I don't think that we were born to do just one thing. There's too many wonderful things in life. But I spent, all my years that I was raising children, volunteering at the school district so often that by the time they were getting close to graduating, they were like, why aren't you getting paid to do what you're already doing? So long story short, I applied to work there, and within a year I became the librarian, and over the years I became the lead librarian for our district. And it was great in the beginning because I'm an author, I'm a writer, and who doesn't want it? It was such a cliche having the writer be the librarian. But over time I knew that it wasn't for me. I was not following my true life's path. I did not feel like it was resonating with me anymore. And then I started thinking, well, I'm gonna try and figure out how I can get out of this, but actually get a retirement because I wanted something, a bang for my buck all the time I spent there. And so many people were like, you're too young to retire. Why would you do that? You're going to end up, you'd make more money if you just stick it out. And I kept thinking, okay, so society is telling me all these things that I'm bad me, just tough it out. But we have this life and I wasn't living it. And I felt like I was betraying myself by holding on to something that everybody else was telling me I needed to be doing, to the point that even my own husband was like, well, a couple more years and you'll be able to blah, blah, blah. And I kept thinking to myself, it's a couple more years of my life. And tomorrow is promised to no one. 2020 hit, the world came to screeching halt, and we all know what that felt like. Everybody was like, whoa, what? And then it makes you really take inventory about who you are and what the hell are you doing with your life. And these people are dying out there. People are scared out there. And it's like, okay, to what end do you stay in a place where you don't feel like it's not who you are anymore? It no longer resonates with you. Why would you do that? You're not living your truth. And I just knew deep down inside that I had more to offer. And it was not in public education anymore. I was no longer on my game. I was very frustrated with the direction that public education was going. I felt like we were failing our students. And I did not want to feel like I was part of that anymore. I just felt like there was something more inside me I had a gift, that we all have a gift. I believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that we all have a gift. Molly, you have a gift in what you're doing. And that is, you have to live your truth to be able to give out to the world what you're really put here to do. So I did that. I put the ducks in a row. I retired early at 53, and now I'm 54, and I've been doing the thing. I've been reaching out to folks. I've been trying to tell everybody the same thing I told myself. Dig deep, people. Find out who you really are, and then do your thing. Don't worry about what society tells you is the right or the wrong thing to do, even if it's in your own household, which, bless my husband's heart, he didn't get it at first because, he spent 38 years in fire service, and, he stuck it out. But now he's like, oh, you're so much happier. Oh, you're so much, people will see me that haven't seen me in a while, like, gosh, you just have like this light around you. Like, you're just so, it's because now I'm living my truth. I'm doing what I want to be doing, and I'm sharing that idea with others. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it so does. And I want to highlight a part of that too, which is, I think a lot of people think, oh, once I'm living my truth, then I'll have that radiance and that light and that fulfillment, that feeling that's just good. And we want to skip to that part. And what we don't always acknowledge is there's a point at which you have to go through the fire. You have to make the leap. You have to go through the discomfort, and sometimes even go against what everyone in society and everyone in your family and everyone in your friends group is telling you is right and good and works. And that's an uncomfortable place to be. That's a really dissonant place to be, to choose what you know and what you're aware of and what you feel above what everything else says makes sense or is right.
Yeah, once you get through it, it's way better. But you do end up losing some people, and you have to be okay with that, because they may no longer recognize who you are anymore. They thought in their head that you were this person here that they always knew. But if you start really living your truth, and you start, you stop abandoning yourself, and you start, aligning with who you really are, some people may not recognize that. It makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it is uncomfortable. If you've convinced yourself to stay in something that's not working for you, and someone else says, I can't take it anymore, I'm out, then it's like the questioning that you've been pushing down inside of you is now confronted again. And that's not fun. Yeah. So, I mean, first off, good. Let's make everyone uncomfortable who's not living their truth, so that they get present to what else is possible. Like, what a gift that is to bring that discomfort to people. Even though we're programmed, especially as women, to not rock that boat and to try and make everybody happy and try and please everyone, and stay in our lane if that's what we think the world wants or needs from us. And
yes,
it takes some boldness to say, fuck no, I'm getting out of that lane.
Well, that's who I was my whole life. I mean, I struggled with anxiety, depression, been on antidepressants, doing the whole thing of making sure that, that I am the peacekeeper. I did that the whole time I was growing up. I did that in the early part of my marriage. I did the whole thing that I was supposed to do, be the good girl, and, all that, and definitely had to stay in my lane. But I realized that I was doing it to myself, because it was a preconceived notion that if you do X, Y, and Z, that you get this result. You have the happy little family, you have the white picket fence, you have, the 2.5 kids and the dog and the cars, and that stuff is stuff. That was not fulfilling me. Mm-hmm. And I've been a writer since I was a small child. I've enjoyed reading and exploration and creativity. And when you stifle a creative, I think that is one of the biggest problems we have in this world, is that people become depressed when they are not following who they really are. And especially a creative.
Yeah, definitely. And so that is evidence to point to, it's time to look at that. It's okay to be as messy and need support or need antidepressants if that's where you're at. And it's also an invitation to look at what more is there trying to come through you? What more is there to your life that you haven't been willing to look at or choose yet? And what would it take to start choosing that? And sometimes it's going to be a big life upheaval, and sometimes it might be a small pivot. But there's so much evidence just to support that we are constantly evolving creatures. And also there's usually some part of us that's been trying to express itself for a very long time that we need to let out. And I forget, I've seen so many times on social media, this post of like, some of the A-list actors and the brilliant minds of our history that didn't tap into their stuff until their 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s, and didn't become the brilliant writer or the brilliant actor or the brilliant mind until later in life. And then that huge life shift turned into they're now household names. I mean, I think Harrison Ford was a carpenter or somebody else. I don't know, but Samuel L. Jackson, I think, didn't break into acting until 40s or 50s or something. It's a lot of people have lived a certain life and then they break into who they're really supposed to be in this lifetime. And that is only something we can discover if we're willing to look at it and start walking toward it. And I think that's really beautiful. Not only that you've chosen that path for yourself, but that you're now helping others navigate that interesting and difficult time to get to the other side of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there are times when I've asked myself, who's going to want to listen to me? The podcasting thing came completely by accident. That was not the plan. That was not the plan at all. But what happened is in 2020, when everything came to a screeching halt in March of 2020, when I was told I literally am not one of those people who feels comfortable taking a paycheck for not doing something. I was going into work every day, even though we had no students, we had a skeleton staff. I was isolating to my library only, but I had work to do. I kept envisioning, okay, I'm just going to get my end of the year stuff done. And then if by chance we get to have kids back, great, I'll be ahead of the game. But I can't just stay home. Finally, about 3 weeks into it, my boss came to me and he was like, you really can't be here. And I'm like, I'm not seeing anybody. I don't feel comfortable taking a pay. He's like, look, here's the thing. We'll get you set up with some things you can do remotely, but you can't be here. So I think the universe, it's when, that whole thing, like, and I love that Oprah says, you get the little tap. And then after a while, you get a bash upside the head because the universe is going to give you signs. Yeah. The universe is going to it's always speaking to you. It's whether or not you're listening or paying attention. And I truly believe with my whole heart that this pandemic came to us to make us all collectively stop and think. Now, I'm not negating that there was horrible things that happened to certain people, and I feel terrible for that. Yeah. But I also believe that it was the universe's way of coming in and truly, sometimes you have to be really shaken to your core to listen. And collectively, I think we needed that. So I did take the opportunity to stop and ask myself those tough questions, but I needed help. So I started listening to podcasts. I never had time for a podcast, had no idea that you could start and stop at any time you want. And that might be generational for me because I am 54. And it's like, oh my gosh, they just became so wonderful. They truly saved my life because I started having a health crisis shortly afterwards. My thyroid went to shit on me. I had no idea why. They still don't know why. Again, I think it was just the universe saying you're stressed. It attacked my thyroid. It has subsequently come back to completely normal without any medication. But I started meditating. I started listening to inspirational speakers all the time, like completely let go of watching the news because it was nothing but bad news, right? Pandemic. And I really started walking in nature more. I started grounding. I was walking barefoot. My girlfriend that was going through stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, she was doing all these wonderful things that has literally saved her life. And I'm thinking, I need to get in touch with myself before I can serve anybody else. So when I decided to do a podcast, it wasn't until the fall of 2020 and people were doing that hybrid school thing. I was back at school, but I kept thinking to myself, this is my awakening. I need to be able to reach more people who are like me, feeling exactly like I feel, and that this is enough, enough. That then, you see everything online with the Great Resignation and all this stuff. And I thought, it really has turned the world on its head. And this is an opportunity, and I was not going to waste it. There was too many lives that were lost, too many things, whatever you want to believe politically, it doesn't really matter. The ultimate thing that happened is people died. And I knew that I wasn't going to help that, but what I could help is I could help myself. And by helping myself, I was going to be able to help others. And I think that that's what a lot of people need to realize when they say, oh, who am I to do X, Y, or Z? Who am I to be able, no one will listen to me, which was in my head. And I realized when you change yourself, you change everything around you, whether that be your social media, whether that be your immediate community, whether that be in your household. You are changing the world when you change yourself because you're making that shift. And when enough people make a shift, collectively, we're making a world shift. And the way I see things now is so different. So I think it really did save me.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. That was the huge gift of 2020 and the huge gift of the pandemic that we're still whatever amount in, is that everybody had to stay home and actually look at, is my life working for me? Is this who I want to be in the world? Is this how I want to show up? Is this how I want to be spending my time? And on a global scale, we had to all look at that. And of course, it led to a grand resignation, because so many people have blindly gone into pathways or chosen jobs that really don't fulfill them. And now they've realized, wait, what if I don't have to do that or be that anymore? What a beautiful opportunity to now pivot and see who I really want to be in the world. And especially now at a time when it's easier than ever to make a living doing that thing or those things that you actually do care deeply about and that you're passionate about and that light you up, whether that's writing or making content or making art or whatever it is. There's a market for so many of those things now, and it's beautiful. It's amazing.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I'm curious, because I know there's going to be people listening to this who haven't made it to that beautiful part of this journey yet.
Sure.
And I think you've shared a lot of wisdom and magic around that already, but what do they need to be thinking about? What do our listeners need to be focusing on so that they can move through the discomfort part of that?
What I found is the first step, and when most people say that they don't know what they want, because that's a big thing, is, well, how do I even know what I want? Especially those who have served others for so long. And I don't want to just pigeonhole women only into this, because I was raised by a single dad. And that when you are doing for others for so long and you no longer know what your own needs are, if your needs haven't been met, you don't even recognize what hasn't been met. You don't recognize what you like anymore. And because I was the only female in the house, I took on that female role where I was the nurturer. So from a small child, I felt like I was the mom and the wife and the maid, and you go through your life and you have to ask yourself, what is it that I don't want? That's the best place to start. If you don't know what you do want, then ask yourself what doesn't work for you. And slowly, by eliminating, the process of elimination, thinking, well, that over there does not suit me. That does not serve me. And I am not doing that particular thing service anymore because I'm not in alignment with it. So what do I like to do? Just start slowly getting yourself back into asking the questions of, what did I love as a child? What were my dreams? Because you had dreams before your mind was completely consumed with everybody else's needs. You had dreams. And it can be something that says like, oh, I never learned to roller skate. Okay, so maybe you may not want to learn to roller skate at 54, but maybe if you're in great shape, you do. But the point is you could say, I was obsessed with baseball. Start going to some baseball games. If you can't afford to go to, the major leagues, go to AAA ball games. They're so much cheaper and they're really wonderful. Find a way to find your enthusiasm again. And slowly but surely, you will find your niche in what starts to speak to you. What did you enjoy doing as a hobby? So I have such a huge list of things that people don't even think that they can monetize. If you're crafty and you make birdhouses, you like to make birdhouses with your grandson, why not try and build a bunch of them and sell them, right? Why not create an online store? Or if you're wonderful in the garden, maybe you love to landscape. You could have a completely beautiful second act as a landscaper.
Or even as someone who makes videos about how you landscape. You don't even have to go and do it for anyone else.
Right. I mean, there are so many ways to do what you love and monetize it. And even if you don't want to monetize it right at first, it's all about feeling the enthusiasm and finding joy in your life, because a quality of life is what we're really all after. You have to find joy. And it's not that joy is going to be there every day you wake up. You have to seek it. It's a daily practice. When I wake up in the morning, I have to practice, because I was not always like that. I was always like, oh my gosh, I have to do the to-do list starts spinning before my eyelids would even open. What a horrible place to live in your brain. I would say to those people who are trying to figure out how to live their best second half of life, to do those things, eliminate what you don't want, start thinking about what you used to dream about, and then slowly figure out what you're good at. And it could be scrapbooking. Okay, maybe you like to scrapbook. People would pay you to do that. Did you know that people pay others to say, here's my box of all of my family photos. I don't know what to do with them. Can you do something with these? Seriously, there's so many things that people don't realize that they can, in the second half of life, have a side hustle or just do it for the sheer joy of doing it. But get outside too. Oh my gosh, that will help your mind.
Yeah.
It will totally help your mind.
Absolutely. And that's a big piece of this too, is the neuro pathways that are created when we're living a life that isn't quite right. And like you said, before you even open your eyes, that your brain is already on, I have to do this. I'm in my to-do list and it feels stressful and hard before I've even gotten out of bed in the morning. And that is a neural pathway that's a lot like when you're walking up a hill and you're on the trail. There's a trail there. Your brain is designed to go and stay on the trail because it spent all these years being on that trail. To now create a life where you wake up and you're thinking about all the magic you get to be today, or all the fun you get to have today, or all the adventures you're about to create, the miracles you're willing to experience. That's a new pathway, a new trail up that hill. And it doesn't become well-trodden and normal for your brain to go there unless you practice it, unless you walk it enough times. And so you have to sort of bushwhack that trail until it becomes well-trodden. And then your brain is more likely to go there when your eyes open for the first moment in the morning. But that takes practice, and that doesn't necessarily happen by itself. So don't sleep on it is the phrase that came to mind. Don't sleep on the parts of your brains that can be rewired. And yes, it feels hard and sticky at first because we're used to thinking and behaving certain ways, but it's so not that complicated to practice. It could be you wake up and you start thinking about your to-do list and immediately say, hey, wait, what am I excited about today? What can I be grateful for today? What is something that I love about me today? Or what's one thing that I love about my life today? And then you can go into the to-do list, or you could go take a walk. You could drink a glass of water. You could sit down and meditate for a few minutes. I mean, all of those things are going to turn your day on in an intentional way before you get into the reactionary life we usually live. But that's such an important piece of the puzzle too. And like you said, who am I to do this? That thought alone is part of the old program, the old neuro pathway. Who am I not to do this is the track we want to step onto.
Absolutely. And it's a learned process. There's so many people that I know that say, well, I've done this way, for the last, whatever years. And I'm too old to change. Well, first of all, no, you're not. I don't care if you're 80. You're never too old to change a habit. And that's exactly what it is. If you're a stressor, if you are someone with anxiety disorder or depression, I truly believe that when you practice something enough, like you said, you're going to change and rewire your brain. And there is science behind that. But if you're too stubborn and you really don't want, then I'm just basically saying, if you want to change, you have to make a change. So it depends on how bad you want it. And it doesn't have to be this, huge, gigantic change either. You can make like a 1 or 2% shift in your day. And then maybe the next week, make another 1 or 2% shift. I always use this analogy, and I think that I heard it from either Kathy Heller or Gabby Bernstein or somebody, but I heard this before and I loved it. And it stayed in my brain because it's something that I can envision. When the ship leaves the port, and has its navigation already set out. Mm-hmm. But if you change and you chart it differently by 2 or 3 degrees, even just 1 or 2 degrees, you're going to end up in a completely different place than where you set out for. Yeah. So making small shifts actually creates really large changes over time. You just have to be consistently making those 1 or 2% shifts. And then give yourself grace when you fall back, because we're all going to have bad days, we're all going to have those days where the bad thoughts and the racing thoughts come back into our head and we forget to slow down. We forget our breath. We forget our to tune out that and to ask ourselves, I forgive that thought. I'm going to choose a different thought right now because that's the old me. You can do that, but you can't beat yourself up when you have a bad day. You have tomorrow, try it again, and just give yourself that grace and stop feeling so angry with yourself when you fall off the wagon.
Yeah. Giving some self-permission, self-compassion is huge, especially on a journey like this, which is really big and scary sometimes. And the neuro pathway thing, the self-permission is super important. And the identity that we come up with of I am depressed versus I have depression, that simple phrasing can be a game changer, because if you're someone who has depression, who has anxiety versus who's identifies as anxious or identifies as depressed, suddenly it's your entire beingness that would have to change to get something new, rather than I have something, I have depression. Well, okay. And you could also have some joy in your life. You could also have some more sort of power to change something when it's not integrated as your identity. So that's a good mindset shift to look at, is what are these, and that awareness from the first part of what's going on with me here. Noticing that thought you're thinking or that thing you said doesn't feel right to you, and immediately course correcting of like, I can't do that. Well, what if I could? What would it be like if I could do that? And Richard Bach, I believe, is one of my favorite writers, but I believe it was him who said, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. And that's really the crux of this, is you can, yes, you can, until you've convinced yourself that you can't. And you're the only one who can convince yourself otherwise. So
I love that. I absolutely love that. That's beautiful. And it's true. And it's, yeah, and people that say they can't, blah, 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 and say, well, maybe you can't right now, but you can eventually, and you just have to learn it, you know. Yeah. And that's another really scary thing for people that they got older, especially if, let's say, you lived a life where you were a caregiver for your children, raising children. Maybe you weren't in the workforce for a long time, but you desire to get back in the workforce, but you just don't know what to do. You're an empty nester. You're having anxiety about getting back out there. No one's going to want me anymore. My resume has been blank for decades. Nobody, you know, the thing is you don't know until you know. So there's so many ways to educate yourself nowadays. There's really no excuse if you truly want something bad enough. You just find a way. People will always ask me, how in the world did you learn how to do all that stuff with the podcast? It's just so complicated. Well, you learn. I didn't know what I knew until I knew. Yeah. But it's when you have an interest in something and that enthusiasm, you find a way to learn things. People that do pottery, they didn't know how to throw pottery until they sat down at the wheel and they learned, or they took a class. You know, you can't have art appreciation except for looking through books and going to museums. But if you want to know the history of stuff, take an art appreciation class. I mean, there's so many things that you can do. There's really no excuse for not loving your life.
Yeah, I love that. Super good. So how can people get a hold of you? Because I know there's people listening and they're like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. First off, go check out Beautiful Second Act podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow to that. But what are some places people can follow you or get more or join your community?
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Molly. So it all got kicked off with my Facebook group. So you can join Beautiful Second Act Facebook group. There's 3 little questions it asks and you're right in. And follow me on Instagram, Beautiful Second Act, but it's beautiful_second_act. And yeah, coming up pretty soon. Molly has been such a great help. Thank you so much. You offer so many wonderful things. Like I said, if you don't know something, you learn it. I'm going to be offering a membership to Beautiful Second Act through a website here pretty soon. So it's going to launch the end of June, early July-ish maybe. But maybe if I can get my stuff together, it'll happen early June. I don't know. But pretty soon, look for me. It's just beautifulsecondact.com.
Awesome. We will put that link in the show notes for you. And it's possible this episode is airing around late June anyway. So that'll be perfect timing. So y'all, all right, if it's not up yet, come back and click that link again and try it in a week or two. But yeah, this has been so powerful. I know so many people listening are probably like, got a fire under their butts now to follow that thing that's been tapping them on the shoulder before it ends up smacking them up the side of the head. But right. Even though you've shared so much wisdom on this show, are there any last words of wisdom you want to leave people with?
Well, really, it's just, if you want something in your life, you have to go out and grab it. No one's going to give it to you. It's truly up to you to make that happen. I wanted to be an author my whole life, and I made excuses because, now the kids need me, or this has to happen, or whatever. And I didn't publish my first book until I was 51. You can do it. You can do anything you want to, but you've got to go out and just grab it with both hands. So don't be afraid.
Awesome. Don't be afraid. Thank
Or
you.
do it scared. Who cares?
Or do it scared. That's actually more powerful. Yeah. Do it scared.
Because the worst thing that can happen is you fall down. So what? You get up, you learn from it.
Yeah. And you build that courage muscle, which is such a powerful thing to have in your life. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Patti.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Yes. And thank you everyone out there for listening. Don't forget, whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you are here for a reason. Bye.